Good evening. From nothing, from silence, wow, wow, sounds. And this sound started coming out of nothing. And these sounds traveled, and the sounds were received because people could perceive. These sounds became right? It became a lot of things, and then it became words. And from words, we had sentences, and we started talking. And then we had languages and styles of speaking, right? So the unity came between this nothing and the word. The tomato crossed the road and went pachak. We understand. Doesn't have any meaning, right? Sarr, he fell down. Dhamal, ouch! All over the world, people understand it. So, with every evolution, from nothing to thought, word, and deed, we have come to banking on smaller portions of life, like words, substituting words, getting hurt by words, feeling with words, virtual realities, and going further and further and further away from what is. And what is our being, what we are. Once upon a time, there was a mountain, and he was very, very, very lonely. And then this mountain was longing for a friend. And when it was longing for a friend, there came a bird and sat on the shoulder of this mountain and said, I'll be a friend. Why not? So this is how I would tell a story now. But if I were to tell the story some time ago, I would probably experience it. I would look at all of you, because the energy comes from the audience. Listen. So when you listen, the audience are equally energetic as the teller. We are on the same platform. And what are you listening to? Not just words, but you're listening to my being, my feelings. Once upon a time, they said there was a huge, big mountain. And this mountain was made of all the elements. He had a little bit of fire. He had a little bit of water. He had some space. And he stood, eyes closed, like a yogi. And he could sense the clouds moving. He could feel the colors of the sun inside himself, from a deep orange to a yellow, and a deep yellow, and then again blue sky and darkness. He was very happy with himself, with his own solitude between the earth and heaven. Absolutely empty. When there came something which created a change. Now, what is constant is change. Nothing has, been the same way. So now there is a change that had to happen, that would happen. So somewhere inside this mountain, he started feeling a little thing going up, a little restlessness, a craving, a feeling of loneliness, waiting for a friend, perhaps. We don't know, because the mountain outside looked perfect. Inside, and there came what? Bird. And this bird came because he had hurt its left wing. So this bird was a she-bird, saw this huge block and came and sat on the shoulder. And the mountain, being sensitive, "Who are you?" grumbled and rumbled. And the bird said, "I'm a little bird. Cool. I've come from the Himalayas, you know. I've been coming with my mother, father, uncle, brother, cousin, sister, and I hurt my left wing. Can I stay for a while, please?" The mountain said, "I don't understand anything." "Oh, you can't move?" "No." "You're fixed?" "Yes." "How's that?" Now, the mountain said, "I'm perfectly fine. But you said something about the Himalayas." Yeah, right. And so this bird started telling a lot of stories from the Himalayan region. And as this bird started telling the stories, the mountain listened. "Aha. Oh-ho. In the night, there's one tiger. It comes. And it's like a snow leopard." "Oh. And then what does your mother do?" "Oh, she told me how to protect myself." Okay, so the stories continue, and there is a relationship and a bonding that happens between the bird and the mountain. And the mountain, being a girl, a young girl, she keeps on and on. And the mountain listens and listens until the bird's wing becomes all right. And she says, "Now it's time for me to go." "Bye." And the mountain says, "Oh, you just came." "Yes, bye. I have to go because my mother, father, oh, yeah, I understand." "Okay, bye." But as she begins to fly, she realizes that there's something that's not that she can't explain. And that she doesn't want to leave this mountain because the mountain says, "You have a lot of friends, but you're the first friend." And this bird says, "You know what? I'll come back next year at the same time." And the mountain says, "Oh, I'll wait for you." And the bird returns just as the beautiful sun is going down and the reflection on the bird's wings. And for the first time, the mountain is watching that bird fly away. Now, this is just a story. But if I want you to believe that this mountain has feelings, it all depends on how the storyteller is going to shape that story, isn't it? So the elements of storytelling are very important for a person who communicates. And I used to use this story a lot when I used to tell or teach history for the children in school. Because history is full of dates. It's always about the past. So when I build up a story inside a story, which is what our Puranic stories were all about, it was, if you look at the Panchatantra, if you look at the Jataka tales, it's a story into a story into a story into a story. So that's what storytelling was about. What happened next? So we have a lot of what you call associated tales. So in those days, learning happened when someone listened with active interest. So there was an energetic field between the teller and the listener. For instance, there's a lot of folk tales about India's independence too. Once upon a time in a folk town, there were a lot of people and they did not want the British to get in. So they were talking amongst themselves, what shall we do to prevent the British from coming in? And the villagers said, let's do something, let's get together and try what we can do. But nobody came up with the answer. The barber said, the next morning, I think he will come straight because he's a British gentleman. So he will come straight to me to have a shave, right? So, okay, so he'll come to have a shave. So he will come in only to me first. Now this barber, he was ready, and the British gentleman comes and sits in the chair and says, yes. And now the barber is ready. Sir, I'll give you a perfect shave, sir. So now he puts on this cloth and then he puts on the cloth for the British gentleman, and then he's waiting. And just as he's about to start shaving, he looks to the side and he says, oh, what's that needle and thread doing in the barber shop? No, sometimes, when I shave, sir, little bit cuts here. So sometimes, the flesh is there, so I want to stitch it. Oh, I see. And the British gentleman has already started getting a little afraid. Now he looks and then he sees, all right, and just as he's about to again put the knife, he says, what's that doing over there? Is that the bow and the arrow? Sir, I told you, when I cut, sometimes this flesh hanging out. So the crow coming, and pecking. So to drive that crow, I use bow and arrow. So now he's almost rising from his chair and he says, yeah, but go ahead. And he looks to the other side and there's a huge dagger. And he says, what's the dagger doing here? He says, sir, sometimes I also get caught with my wife's memories and I'm thinking of her. And that time when I'm shaving, full cut. So when head hanging, then not very good. So take the dagger and, what? I don't want to get into this town at all, he says. And he runs away from there. So you see, it is the wisdom of the local village people who together have managed to drive away the British gentleman from coming into the town. So there is something that we don't have today in our education system is wisdom or the perceiving power, because we're so caught again in what we are doing than in our being. Isn't it? Would you agree? Yeah. Yes. So there are various elements when I have to tell a story, when I have to be a communicator, when I have to be a teacher, because I'm in the class 40 minutes, 40 minutes, 40 minutes, 40 minutes, 40 minutes. So how do I make an audience interesting? What is it that I need to equip myself when I have to be a teller? So the elements may be a little bit of voice. Yes, voice plays a very important role. How I transmit, isn't it? It's all about transaction. So I could have a voice which is ho, 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 right? So I could use a little bit. You know the teachers teach, Baba, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. Right? Once upon a time, there was a crow, he was very thirsty, he went looking for water everywhere, and then he found a jug of water and then finished, right? So it's very monotonous. So I could probably tell the story as, once upon a time, there was a crow who was very thirsty. He went looking for water. And then he found a jug of water, but there's very little water. And then he looked around and he dropped the pebbles. The water came bloop, 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 bloop. Drank the water and flew away happily. Right? Now, I don't have to tell the story like this. I could still tell the story as, once upon a time, there was a crow who was very thirsty. And he went looking for water. Instead of saying, the cat goes, meow, meow. Dog goes, bow, wow. Isn't it? So we have a very monotonous, mechanical way of teaching and learning. So voice plays a very important role as a communicator in a class. So there was a sultan. It comes from here. Yeah? Quack, quack, the duck. Comes from here. Tiny Thumbelina, you could fill into my hands. We could get the voice. You could add a little music when you're telling a story to keep the audience attentive. So these are probably some of the elements, and my body language. I could use gestures. You know, Indians naturally we use a lot of gestures. So we always say, even in our dance poses, right? Do you like it? Yes? So we use a lot of gestures, but what prevents all this from being expressed is myself. It's my, I would say, two things, very important poles that prevents. One is fear, and one is that I'm not confident at all, which is related to fear. And what prevents me is my ego. Yeah? Because I've become today so self-centered. So rather than centering in the self, we've become very self-centered. What will people think? I'll be sued if I tell the wrong word, isn't it? So with more and more evolution and more print and more things, I agree that it's very important for us to connect, but also that it has increased the fears in our society. So you cannot be, Gandhi was the change that he wanted the world to see. So he was the change. But what is preventing us from being that change is all these hurdles, right? So I just want to sum up by saying that a lot of things happen through stories. One can communicate, reach out, and go back into what you are. So, stories come from silence. Stories are sustained in silence. Stories are carried forward by silence. And stories return to silence. And silence is all. Thank you.